Hello and welcome to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker, and on this week's episode, we're going to get right back into the conversation I had with Sarah Harris. Enjoy. When you have a purpose with something, generally speaking, you're not going to take no for an answer because it's something that is you're driven to pursue it, you want to. And so giving up just isn't necessarily an option when you find that sort of spark. And, you know, as a career and leadership coach, when that spark happens, it is one of the most awesome and amazing things to witness when something just clicks within somebody and it's like, that is what I'm supposed to do. Nothing is better than that moment when that happens.
Oh, it's super magic. And it's super magic, like, as I've seen in my career of watching other people like have that aha moment of like where they fit and what they have to contribute. And, when you start seeing less of yourself and more of other people in service delivery and maybe like programs being put on or whatever it may be, it's like, that is cool. That is like that evolution. Oh my goodness. I love to watch it.
It's magical, and to play a role in somebody just thriving and just getting what they want. It's to sit back and just watch them go it's amazing. How did you get involved with the California Council of the Blind?
Okay, let's go back to about 6 months after I lost my sight, and I'm sitting at what was called the Friendship Center for the Blind. That was what it was before it became Valley Center for the Blind. Again, very social, place. And so I'm sitting there, and I have one lady going, "Come to the California Council of the Blind meeting at Bob's Big Boy." And then I have another person telling me to go to the National Federation of the Blind meeting, wherever they were meeting at the time. I don't remember. And I decided I didn't want to do either, because if they were going to sit there and pull me in two different directions, I'm like, I'm not blind. I don't exist here yet, right? Because again, only 6 months, right?
Yeah, you're still adjusting. Yeah,
I'm still adjusting, and I'm like going, I don't think I want to do this, and so I didn't, and I kind of forgot about it for a little bit. I won't even lie. And then, like I had said, I started hanging out at the Blind Center and about 2011, 12-ish, and got invited to go to a CCB meeting. And at the time, there wasn't an NFB chapter in Fresno anymore. So, CCB was the place to go. So I went. Within one meeting, somehow I was helping to put together their first ever Dining in the Dark fundraiser.
And that doesn't surprise me at all that you.
I know, right? And then from there, I was voted as the vice president the following year. And so it's so funny because, like, you go to something, and now I will tell you, I go to things that I like to sit back and be the person watching everybody do stuff. Because when you are always like behind the scenes and in front of the curtain, being on stage, it's scary, because you have to balance that time really, really well. I became the president of the chapter in like 2017. And that's the same year that I joined the board of directors for the statewide organization. And that was really a neat experience to be welcome at that table, in a lot of groups, not just blindness groups, but a lot of volunteer organizations like what CCB is. You typically see people at the top are ones that have been around for a really, really long time. And obviously I hadn't been, but I had proved that, I had things to offer to the organization, and I've continued to do that. I am very proud to say that I co-chair the convention planning committee. And that's another thing I learned, and I'm going to teach you guys. If you chair a committee of any sort, get a co-chair. It's always good to have a co-chair. That was this year. I finally have a co-chair. She's awesome. Her name is Andrea. I adore her. And so we put on our very first hybrid convention, and it was good. It didn't fall apart. There were little things, here and there, like there are with anything, but it went off and it was done and it was amazing. And I will tell you that was one of the most like big sigh, when I was done, like,
Mhm.
okay, we did it. We didn't totally make a disaster of it, because it's a little scary. You're going into a hotel, blind into a
Mhm.
hotel, but using other people's equipment. You're hoping that the folks on the other end of Zoom are able to hear you and communicate and all of those things. And it worked, and that was really cool. I'm also co-chair for Resolutions Committee, which of course is the backbone to most organizations like CCB, where we sit down and we argue over commas and semicolons, but in the end, we come out with some really great works that are going to move forward into advocacy. And oh gosh, so many different realms. Resolutions is where accessible ATMs came out of,
Mhm.
a resolutions committee meeting, things like that. But it's definitely been a ride, that is for sure. I do encourage folks to at least give membership organizations a chance, because there's nothing like having other people who have similar disabilities as you that you can commiserate and bitch with, because sometimes you just want to yell, dude, where's my
Mhm.
cane, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because, there's something to be said when there's a shared experience. People can have largest amount of empathy available. If it's something they haven't experienced, there's still something missing. And there's something to be said for misplacing your cane and not being able to find it.
Yes,
Just being
yes.
able to when somebody else gets it, there's something there. And that I think that's important to acknowledge, is sometimes we just need somebody that gets it.
This toothpaste, or is
Yeah.
it icy hot?
Yeah. And when you make that mistake, the frustration, sometimes you just want somebody who gets it. And I totally understand that. So the California Council of the Blind, is it political in nature? So like tell me a little bit about it for people that maybe aren't as familiar as to like what is their mission, like what's their purpose, what is the reason they exist?
So, the purpose and the mission of the California Council of the Blind is to increase the independence and equality for blind Californians, blind and low vision Californians. It has been around since 1934, founded right here in Fresno. It's actually the oldest, from my understanding. So, all you history buffs out there, don't come at me if I'm wrong. The oldest membership organization for people who are blind out there. It started off here as a group of folks that either were blind or had interest in social services for people who are blind, came together, oddly enough, here in Fresno, to start a movement. And it really was about, at first, it was about getting rights. And so white cane laws came from that, different laws for Social Security. Um, all of those things. It's not quote unquote political in nature, but we do get a lot into politics, right? We don't lobby, but we definitely advocate. We are nonpartisan. I think that's one of the most interesting things, is to listen to some of the debates that happen within our meetings and things, when it gets down to what's right and what's wrong. And then what I love is the fact that you could totally sit there and have an argument with your friend, and then you can walk out and shake hands and go hang out and have dinner or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's really really the nice part. But the number one thing, our motto is empowerment through advocacy, because once people learn that they have a voice, no matter who you are, where you're from, once you learn your voice and you learn how to use it and where to use it to have effective change, that's again another one of those magical moments. I was so happy to be a part of, alongside my friend Jeff Tom. Him and I worked with Assemblymember Dr. Rambula here in California last year for AB 2480, which brings back services for people with vision loss who don't have an employment goal. And, and I don't know exactly what it looks like in all states, but here in California, they took away the quote unquote homemaker track, very poorly named, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
when WIOA came into play. And so there was all these people, roaming around lost because, the last thing you're probably thinking about when you lose your sight is, oh, where am I going to work at?
Yep.
You're thinking, how am I going to cook, my food in this microwave with this flat screen? Or, how am I going to get to the doctor? What am I going to do when my kid goes to school? Those kind of things.
How are
And
you just going to live?
yeah, how are you going to live? And how are you going to tell which thing is which in the cabinet? All of those things. It's huge. And so those services have been brought back. There's not a ton of money in them in the services yet, but I do know like October 1, there's going to be a little bit more money. So it's we got to show that there's a need. So if there's anybody in California who has vision loss and doesn't have a vocational goal, please call me. And I will point you in the right direction of where you can get services, because it is important. And there's a lot of things you can teach yourself, but there's something to be said of learning from another person who is blind. And typically when you go to an agency, you will work with somebody else who's blind, and that's really something that's incomparable for sure.
This is the Dissing My Ability podcast, and we'll be right back. It's hard to picture yourself doing something if you haven't experienced, somebody in a similar situation actually doing it and thriving. It's like, that's why representation matters. That's why it's so important that regardless as to the disability, that people are represented out there that are thriving and being successful, because we're out there, but we're just kind of hidden in a lot of spaces. But so
that's for the next episode,
right? Yeah, that's a big thing to unpack there. You mentioned WIOA, and for people that are not familiar with what that is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, from the U.S. Department of Labor. Essentially, for people that have disabilities, oftentimes, in order for them to receive any type of services, they must have some sort of vocational goal in order to go through vocational rehab programs through their state. Would you agree with that statement, Sarah?
Yeah, that's pretty typical. Okay.
Yeah. And oftentimes, if you don't have the goal of being employment, there's very few services that are available to you, depending upon the state that you're in. I know here in Arizona, there's some stuff you can get, but it's pretty minimal. Really, they want you to go through the VR, vocational rehab program, pick a employment goal, and then hopefully that works out. Would you say California is similar?
California is super, super similar. And and it's not an easy job. I mean, let's really think about like the job of like a DOR or a VR counselor. Like it's so hard, because like you have people that go, well, they told me that you would get me a job, right? And it's like, well, no, there's more to it. And that's why bringing back services for people who don't yet have that goal, I believe is key, because I will tell you that my time that I spent on the quote unquote homemaker track, learning different skills, not everything I probably should have, could have learned. But the things that I did learn and got me to, have the capability to be able to volunteer and to, figure out how to do case notes and things like that. And, all these different things, like that is what, really gave me, the fire to be able to get out and work. And then also seeing other successful blind people, that's huge. And I know you mentioned that earlier, but it's like, because when you do live in this like little tiny box and you're like, oh, woe is me, and it sucks, this is terrible, and then you get out in the world and you meet people who have really, really cool jobs. Like there's one guy who like he literally does like things to do with like wine and scents, and he's a scientist of some sort, and there's like all these different cool people that unless you're out there, you don't hear about. And then you go, oh, when you do hear like, I could do that too, or I could do something like that, or if like he has a job doing that, why can't I do such and such?
Yep.
And so it really sparks that, creative juice flowing, as they say.
I think it's so true. Confidence is one of the main things that I think is kind of broken when you encounter disability as an adult, because everything changes.
Oh yeah.
And so I was very successful prior to disability. And I consider, myself, I'm successful just doing something different now, but I was broken after I encountered it. I think something that is, and that maybe not enough attention is given to, is you have to build that person back up, regardless as to what the disability is. You got to build them back up to where they believe in themselves again, where they have confidence in themselves again, so that they can actually go back to work and be gainfully employed in something where there's actually an opportunity to thrive and not just have some job.
Right, right. And reimagine yourself.
Yeah, where you see the
Mm.
potential in yourself again versus, well, I got to go get a job because that's the only way that I can have any sort of help. And I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to go about it. I get, resources and all that kind of stuff is an important thing, but ultimately when you're able to thrive in whatever it is you're doing, you're going to be earning more money. You're going to be, if ultimately we want to see people thrive, you got to give them the ability to believe in that they can first.
Exactly. And it's all like little things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember the first time that I got an iPhone, the first text message I sent, I'm like, ooh, you mean I don't have to pick up the phone and talk to somebody for an hour just to ask them one question? Wow, this is cool. And, email, YouTube. Oh, YouTube can teach you how to do anything. I'm telling you, there's been times where somebody's like, hey, can you do such and such? I'm like, sure. And then I go to YouTube and I learn how to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
there you go.
But you got to figure
Um,
out how to do all that stuff, then
you
that
do.
takes time. And just to throw somebody out there and be like, all right, what do you want to do for work? I don't even know how to get somewhere safely, that's so
Right?
far off then. And I've worked, in the VR system when I was at the Foundation for Blind Children as their, career specialist. And being a VR counselor is a hard job, no doubt about that. It's underpaid, it's underappreciated. They want to help people, but they're mandated to have, the clients are mandated to have some sort of vocational goal. I don't know how that serves anybody if they're not
I
ready for it,
agree.
like if,
Yeah.
like, all right, well, what do you want to be? I don't know. I just want to know how to clean, like that's literally like a conversation that they have. It's like, I just want to know how to cross the street. I can't think about work. Forcing people to have that vocational goal if they're not ready, I think can really put people into a bad place. And I've had conversations with people about exactly that process where they don't ever go back to work because they're just so traumatized from the entire process. And
Oh, yeah.
that's not good.
And then even the whole piece too about benefits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I
Yeah.
go to work, then I'm going to lose everything and this and that. And there's so many people that have been, I would say almost like put in a place where they're brainwashed to believe that that's their life. That's all that they can do. And, sit on the couch and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, listen to your talking book. And, and that's, if that's what somebody wants to do, that's cool. But
Yeah.
if you want more, then do more.
Yeah.
And your more is up to you. I think that's the biggest thing that, I've learned is that, whatever your more is it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You
That's
don't have
what
to,
matters. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to climb a mountain. You don't have to become a psychiatrist or a marriage and family therapist. That's the number one. You don't have to work at a call center. You don't have to do things that you don't want to do
Yep.
because true success across the board is going to be in you doing something that you love because you're going to be happy. You're going to do a better job at it and it's going to bleed out all over the place in good fortune and in good ways for not just you but for others. I mean that's a
Absolutely.
big deal.
This is Dissing My Ability podcast, and we'll be right back. With that being said, what would you say over your 20-year journey is, I don't want to say what you look back and you're like, oh, that's what I'm most proud of, because there's a lot there. But when you kind of look back over, where you see yourself going from where you are now, it sounds like you're just getting started.
Oh yeah, 40s are great. Oh my gosh. So I'm 42. I'll be 43 in August. And I just had this conversation with a new friend a couple weeks ago about how like my 30s were cool, but my 40s are really, really great because there's a lot of opportunity out there. And it's all about just going for it, right? And we have a youth group. It's called Be About It, because you don't just talk about it, you got to be about it. And so, I have to roll that way too. I've gotten really, really involved locally in advocacy over the years. It started off with mainly things that were disability related, and then that's stared off into other realms as well. And throughout this time, I'm always like, I should go and run for office. I should become, a city council member, and it just those things that you just kind of say,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, maybe I should try that, or maybe I should do that. And then, there's things that lead you to where you're supposed to be. And so through, my opportunity to be, behind the curtain, as they say, in a lot of local things, I've learned a lot of processes. I've learned, how things come to fruition. It's not just as simple as you're like, I want a stop sign. No, there's a lot of stuff that goes into getting that stop sign there, and really having a lot of respect for the people that do that work. I have decided to go ahead and do it. I'm going to run for city council here in Fresno. My council member is actually up. He has thrown his hat in for the board of supervisors here. So that's kind of interesting because that puts me at a possibility that I may be running a year earlier than what I had planned.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's exciting. And so it's funny. I back in, oh my goodness, was it March, February or March? I applied for this thing called the San Joaquin Political Academy at our local Chamber of Commerce, and I was like, that seems really cool. Like it kept coming to my email, and I'm like, maybe I should just apply. And I have to say, it's been one of the coolest experiences that I have ever had. I sat in a room with people who are field representatives for um, people like Kevin McCarthy. One of his field representatives was in my class, a local city councilwoman, one of her field people were there, board of supervisors, somebody who's running currently, a current candidate for city council, land use people, realtors, people who are looking to run in the future, and just having real nonpartisan conversation about stuff that affects all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And really looking at it through a lens of how can we make things better instead of how can we continue to just stir things up, because that's what I see right now. Is I just see a group of people who really, want to be mean to each other and mean to
Yeah.
others. And, I really want to bring back common sense and kindness, because that goes a long way. It really, really does.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
wholeheartedly agree.
yeah, and so that's my direction now, and it's so funny because like I thought that what I wanted to do is be an executive director, like, and I applied for a job. I came in second, which was really, really cool because I got to go through that whole process too. Maybe this is why. Maybe this is my direction that I'm supposed to go into. And again, I think it comes from having a lot of insight on a lot of different things. I forgot to mention that I have a master's degree in common sense and life experience. Which I think says a lot. I do. I think it says a lot. I used to be like one of those people like, don't ask me about my degree. Don't ask me about my degree. But, I'm very proud to say that I don't have a degree, and that's okay. And because, what I've been able to do without that piece of paper has been pretty cool. And, what I don't know, I learn and I go ask
Mhm.
people. I
Yeah.
never pretend to know something, that's for sure.
Well, then I think that's something that is underappreciated. I won't speak to something unless I am informed on the subject. Otherwise, I say nothing because
Hmm.
I don't want to look like I am just trying to wing it out there or give bad information. And, a degree, while admirable, isn't necessarily the sign of competence or a broad understanding of a subject. Or a lack of a degree doesn't mean that somebody's not educated or smart. And so I think that that's important to say as well.
Yes, this blonde is smart-ish. There we go.
I would say you're more than ish. That's for sure.
Why, thank you. Why, thank you.
That is for sure. So as we wrap up, is there perhaps a piece of advice or a little bit of nugget of information or just some bit of wisdom that you would like to impart on people that are listening?
Oh, step out of your comfort zone often. Even if it's just a little, like, putting just one foot out, like you're doing the hokey pokey. Just do things little by little that are different from the norm, because those are the things that will inspire you in ways that you never even thought you needed to be inspired. And that's what leads us to be bigger and better and greater than yesterday. And just always continue to grow. I think that that's really important. And don't let things that suck totally rule your whole life, because things are going to suck and you just have to move on from them. There
Yeah,
you go.
that's but that's so true. Stuff is going to happen, and it's not the stuff that happens that defines anybody. It's how they move through it and get to the other side of the crap. That's what I believe
Exactly.
defines somebody is how did they, work through that challenge. I think that's critically important. So thank you for that. Where can people find you if they would like to connect with you or learn maybe more about the work you do at the agency or the California Council for the Blind?
So the easiest way to find me, and I'm just going to say, because it literally, you won't forget it, is you can email me at crazyblindlady@gmail.com. And yes, it's spelled just the way it sounds. And I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, so take crazy lightheartedly, please.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and it comes from, I had my year anniversary of being blind, and I told my husband, let's call it Crazy Blind Lady Day. And so I've been the Crazy Blind Lady ever since. And I even have my own little consulting business, Crazy Blind Lady Consulting. So hey,
it's a term of affection, not of
it
anything.
is not of anything else. So that's definitely, and I'm also on LinkedIn, and not as much on Facebook anymore, but definitely on LinkedIn.
That makes two of us when it comes to Facebook. So
Yes.
thank you again, Sarah, for coming on and being my guest and just being so open. And you're a wealth of knowledge and of positivity and of hope and inspiration for people that maybe are struggling to see themselves, with a big bright future when they encounter some sort of big challenge or something that disrupts their life. You are a shining example of what is possible. So thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. You're such a shining star yourself.
Thank you. You're very, very kind. So thank you for that. And
Remember that. He said I was kind.
to me, you always have been. So that's all I can go by. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I'm your host, Ken Meeker, and I hope you will tune in each and every week as I engage with my guests about trying to dismantle the stigma and shame associated with living with disability. Please remember to be kind to others and to yourself. Thank you.